and once that happened, I could live with any part of it. Absently manage the lumbering bus, letting the city fall on my ravenous eyes. I, Charon of Juarez, ferrying the sullen damned their 9 rings of factories and fenced borders, hauling the dispensable labor from one end of hell to the other. And once in a while, letting a forgotten bag be taken by not the one who left it. My way into a cut, my chance to grab a little comfort while the city succumbs to itself, lonesome and violent. And so also once in a while, my eyes overstay their welcome, and my hands reach quickly for the disembarking flesh, vehicles of sensations I have seized, a quick tug of a passing corpse not yet laid low. Thank you so much. And thank you all, and please welcome Linda Latona to the stage. Give it to the stage, the pit, the pool.
In her poetry collection, Dodge and Burn, Juliia explores trauma and memory in relation to the art of photography. She shows us how the human psyche tends to dodge, burn, abscond, how it contrives to contain hidden fears. Her poems draw the eye to this containment, exposing the hidden spots in the text. Her writing struggles with provoking questions. What lurks under the skin? What is your darkest fantasy? Your trigger? Sometimes she places us inside the lover's own dark room. Through her lens, we sense the artist's superb tendency to manipulate images, to frame meaning. Listen and feel your senses dissolve in the dark play of language. Help me welcome a fresh new voice, our friend Juliia.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, so I'm going to read from the Dodge and Burn collection that I'm writing, and I'll start by just reading a quick note about the dodging and burning techniques that I model the poems after. So, dodging and burning are terms used in photography for a technique used during the printing process to manipulate the exposure of selected areas on a photographic print, deviating from the rest of the image's exposure. In a darkroom print from a film negative, dodging decreases the exposure for areas of the print that the photographer wishes to be lighter, while burning increases the exposure of areas that in the print that should be darker. Okay. Silence is the new treason. Silence is the new treason. It requires you to do something prophetic with your hands. I said, draw me a blueprint for this blackness, and he skids a line in my opaque pantyhose, traces the fatal dominant axis, a sudden origin point, stretched infinite. Now you are assuming the position of hollowed, like the original confession spoken with a cut in its throat, or fucking in broad daylight. Your words have a sudden twitch, tamp the page, jab the mouth open, carving out the insides. Only the cruel wind knocks you out with a wooden spoon, licks the body off, like salt on the rim, a stubborn topcoat, or fresh white scab. Red Summer. It was the summer of you had to be there to feel the emptiness. My thigh gap was the assembly trench, the drop of blood on the atlas that signals the arson. My body was the wild match, the pent-up petroleum, a cage of damp ashes and a white backless eyelet, your tanned skin, violent torch in the wind, or purple ecstasy. Even still, I am alone with this, or remembered in cycles. Once every red moon, the men drip down my legs like a warm-fired liquid burn, whispering of their winters. Their lips graze the wound, reopened. A tiny incision snips the womb, a stitch sealed tight with their cold breath. Okay. Developer. The imperceptible takes the face of the last face you saw. So, while you drift in the between, lean sideways so daylight inverts you, like a dark thought ripped open. Most of darkness is an illusion. A dark core where the face was, a bulging eye where the light was, a white flower splitting open. You rub your spine against its stem and your skin sparks. You feel nothing. This is how you'll begin to unravel your way into elliptical. You leave a piece of your skin on the mirror. You cut the red ribbon from your hair into the wind. If you could, toss yourself into the wind. If you could be that thread, the spinning out of, the open wound carried in the open hand, strike a match to the open bone and flick the flames. Drag a ripe thorn behind you. Everything it touches forms a greasy stain. Okay, War Survival Guide. Hidden in the following is a request of what I'd like you to do when you locate my body. Statistics show that 1 of every 10 men is necessary for my mass destruction. After all, you get 9 lives, but only 1 death counts. And if you have everything to do with biological warfare, then my skin is topography pre-mapped for a war zone, a skin clamped tight over its bones with pins wanting off. If I am in grave danger of becoming an expiration, then when it's all over, don't rot without me. Disconnect the dots, solve for X. You are now free to make hay with the body, undo me like a ribbon from the hair, tilt my head back, insert the syringe. The first to find the needle gets the hot pink slab. Okay, O means no. Hollow the no you suck from my mouth like warm honey dripping wet O's off your lips. Hollow the O you swish around like a ripe cherry with no pit, only hollow. Don't skin my O, don't take my O the wrong way, or remove the insides of the O, or squeeze the pink juice from the O with your hands. Don't trap my O in your throat, or lick my neck with the blood of the O still fresh on your face. And now the O rolls off your tongue, a chorus of flat O's, a road-killed O, an O whose lips are sealed, whose O is slashed, whose O you keep cold-pressed inside your pocket, or suffocated in your fist. You get the O whiff when the O wriggles out of its chains, then it's hide the O, bury the O, shave the defiant O into thread, dry its lungs out and bring the O out into a stiff towel, toss the O, peel the eyelids of the O back, scrape it hollow, hollow the O, hollow, a silent O, the hollow O, the only O that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one is called Inferno. When I paint my nails black, we touch, you burn. Holes because my hands are hot anvils. And if a woman is half net, half sword, then how far will I go to trap a man before searing my eyes out? When I paint my nails black, I graze the scratches on my rib cage, the proof of the misogynist still living inside me, clawing my rib bones, begging for a shorter sentence, clanking the bars like manic little boys, holding a match to my insides, asking for ransom. Whose face I smacked, received the flame, and itched my lips off to hide the evidence, because the lips were the burn on the face. The original sin of the woman, the natural catastrophe, wears nothing but a red smile. When I paint my nails black, I feel it like a pink spark, a liquid torch, bright silver, the suckle, the sweet scent of warm bodies crackling together, all molten and alive, then the rubbing of broken flesh flaking off. When I paint my nails black, we touch, you burn. Your face will take the shape of my last inferno. Okay. So now I'm going to welcome Sarah up to the stage
to introduce Thirii. Not to read yet. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Thirii. I don't think I'll ever forget the first line of prose I ever read by Thirii Myint. Driftwood lies white like bones in the sand. In the piece of short fiction in which the line is born, Bliss Place, a character navigates a friend's miscarriage on the shores of an island. In the first sentence, the first page, the first image, the first submission of this program, Thirii had captured some essence of a landscape that, at the time, had been haunting me. Weeks before, I'd left the place in which the story was set, Whidbey Island, a little nub in the Pacific Northwest. In Bliss Place, the island was rendered both ineluctably unique and universal. On Whidbey Island, the natural landscape often felt both wild and dead. Thirii's powerful ability to incant simple, evocative images enchanted me from the very beginning. Thirii's characters often navigate physical and emotional landscapes that read as both urgently unique and universal. The weight of myth and history, both written and spoken, archived and living, weaves through
Thirii's stories, or otherwise presses in on her characters' narratives, or otherwise burdens their very bodies and genetic fibers. In The End of Peril, The End of Enmity, The End of Strife, A Haven, the protagonist's body becomes a site of historical conflict. She carries the weight of conquest in her blood. It infiltrates her hair and physical form. It also infiltrates the natural landscape, which becomes imbued with history gone feral. Among a myriad of things, Thirii asks us to think and rethink the conflict inherent to the telling of history itself. Tal banishes love from the kingdom, Thirii writes in Tal, Luna, a story in which the landscape of city and of dormitory are steeped in a mythic sense of antiquity and age. A narrative of healing, love, and adventure is dignified and elevated in a very playful Thirii way. The experience of reading Thirii's work often feels like a shared haunting. The language of her stories is compressed and urgent, redolent with a music that transcends syntactic sound. The language of her stories resonates profoundly into the brain, and her narratives resonate profoundly into the imagination long after you read them. The structures of her stories often feel puzzle-like, generatively cryptic. Meanings, repetitions, and transformations unpeel and unpeel with each reading to reveal a great depth of intent and human stuff inside of them. Her landscapes, stories, and characters that charge along within the narratives are steeped in heart. Her stories do things that stories should do. They poke us, they question us, they challenge us to trace, to map, to draw, to paint conquest and feral trees onto our own bodies. I'm so excited to learn more from Thirii tonight and in the future and from her work, and I'm thrilled to present her this evening. Please welcome Thirii Myint to the swimming pool.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really nice. So I'm actually going to start by reading a poem, just so you guys can have some time to transition into prose, because I know it can be a little jarring. And the poem I'm going to read, sorry I keep not talking into the mic, but the poem I'm going to read is actually a prose poem. Maybe it's prose, who knows. But it's based on the Therigatha, which is part of the Pali Canon, and the Pali Canon are the earliest writings of the Buddhist text, the earliest Buddhist text that we have, and they're also the first ever written text about female enlightenment or female mystical experience. So I'm going to read the poem, which is insane, and then this, which is less so. There's also a Therigatha, which is the male experience of enlightenment. But I think it's kind of silly because Buddhism then kind of annihilates the difference between the two. Okay. Also, this is a translation from the Pali by Andrew Schelling and Anne Waldman. Chaita speaks. Heaping up good karma in rebirth after rebirth, Chaita had been born a fairy in the 94th aeon. Although I'm thin and weak, spring and my once lively gait gone, gone, I've climbed the mountain, leaning on my walking stick. I throw the cloak off my shoulder, overturn the little begging bowl. Against this rock I lean and prop the self of me, break through the gloom that boxed me in. Ah. Okay. And this is just called Chaita. In a past life, Chaita had donated 8 long-stemmed flowers. She had fed her body to a lioness. She had plucked out her eyes and offered them to a lustful man. She had dug a well. She had shaved her head and gone to live quietly in the woods. She had offered rice milk to an ascetic under a tree. She had relinquished her wealth. She had meditated on death. She had carried her mother on one shoulder and her father on the other, and they had emptied their bowels over her arms and back and breasts twice a day. Chaita had, she had, she had. Chaita had been born a fairy in the 94th aeon. I'm so tired, Chaita thought. I have a headache. I want to lie down. Chaita watched her feet move one before the other and waited for her body to follow. Her feet looked so small and so far away. They seemed to be shrinking with each step. The ground was falling further beneath her.
She had to extend her legs straighter each time to touch the ground surface with her feet. If I lie down on this ground, Cheta thought, I will fall. The ground and I will fall down together. I cannot lie down, Cheta thought. Damn it. So the second part of my reading, now that you guys have gotten used to the transition period, is going to be prose, if I can get this open. I always have a really hard time at readings because I'm a really visual learner, and I don't really, I'm a visual learner, so I really need some sort of like visual or tactile aid. So, for those of you guys who are like me, I created some things. Sarah Roth, will you please?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to read from a short story called Sea Monster, which is the end of what Sarah was talking about. And it has to do with letters, or at least a small part of it has to do with letters. So I created 10 letters that basically contain the story. Well, not all of them. All together they contain the story. And they're illustrated by yours truly. And also have weird little cutouts from this book of palmistry that my friend Nazanin gifted me. So enjoy. And there's only 10, so you will have to fight each other.
Oh.
So Sarah's going to just distribute them to whoever wants them.
You have to fight later. Okay.
Dev gets one. And some letters contain more than one page, so you guys can share at the end. Or maybe some people can take home envelopes. Everything's decorated. Or you can take a lock of my hair. That's nice too. All right, I'm just going to start reading as you guys are opening the letters and following along. Thank you. Sea Monster. The woods are heavy, the way I can't remember them, and I'm counting deer to pass the time. I count 17, and then I start again. 17 because that's how many years she had, and I guess something reset for me then too. I'm up to 9 this time when I hit the sea monster. It shouldn't be out so far. This is deep woods, landlocked country. But there it is in my headlights, a sea monster. Rubber-thick skin pulled over a slimy core, little suckers budding all along its legs. Words form and harden in the cavern of my mind, hang there like stalactites. I want to apologize. I'm afraid the sea monster is dead, but even more that it isn't. I'm sorry, I say. I pull the car around, drive away. I catch the side of it in my rearview mirror, bruised purple in the taillights, a heap of flesh. I'm sorry, I say again. The monster crept through her dream left ajar, it must have. I never saw her close a book. This is the dream I'm thinking of, a sea monster stranded at sea, sitting inside a refrigerator. That was my girl, the kind of mind she had. Like a bathtub, she had said, the refrigerator turned on its side, rocking back and forth on the water. Landlocked, and those were the kinds of dreams we had. I'm driving to the ocean, I guess. I want to see it before I get to 17. And there was this other place she talked about sometimes, a place in the city where she was born. Bliss Place, she called it, an old office building by the water. It was on a street like any other, flat roofs, fat electrical lines, parking lots broken up in pieces, a T-intersection that didn't seem to lead anywhere. You had to know how to find it, she said. You had to turn right and walk another block to where the sidewalk ended. The trees grew thicker then. The streets opened like a storybook, and there was the water right before you, right there. And it didn't even matter, she said, how ugly it all was or had been. There was the water, vast and blue, and it didn't even matter. And if I make it to Bliss Place now, I think maybe I will find her there. I mean, how is the world a truthful place? How does any life really end? She never once closed a book. She left them lying around, spine up on tables, the way I left the sea monster lying on the road. We were the same way, my girl and I. The deer in the woods refuse to dissipate. I can make out the light pollution of the next city, and still I'm counting to 17 and back again. Sea monster, I say, I'm sorry you've come so far. We talked together, the sea monster and I, about prayer and parenthood and eudaimonics, things that require some equivocation. The city is pink when we arrive, and I feel a little homesick. The lights are soft along the river. There is a drawbridge pulled up, puncturing the sky. This next city is overrun by whales, the river glutted with them. People gather by the banks and drink beers and watch. It makes me feel awful. The river gleams black with the smooth arching backs of the whales, their dark fins carving the water. I park under the bridge and compose a letter. Dear Mother, I write, my girl is dead. They're throwing her body into the river. They're feeding her to the whales. There's a pile of junk mounting under the bridge, graffiti and stencils of a female Christ. Her body is bloated with rain, guarded by red-eyed sewer boys. Refrigerator, they say to me, beginning a haiku. The sewer boys speak only poetics. But I am a narratologist. Dear Mother, I begin again. I'm on the road. I'm going to find Bliss Place. A sea monster, lost at sea, sits inside a bathtub of a refrigerator. Far away, there is a shore, and there are whales beached there in a mass suicide. The sea monster is wary of cults. She nurses her missing leg. They take forever to grow back. There are 3 ways to build a heart. All monsters know this because they are so ugly. Stone heart, sand heart, water heart. Stone holds, sand slips, and water wrecks ships. Water cold and dark and heavy like sleep rocks a refrigerator back and forth in the night. Water crumbles the bluffs and pulls down the trees. Water floods and leaks and sounds in the gutters, falls from the sky. Water freezes in winter, traps small fish. Water melts in spring and runs in the street. Water rises and falls by the pull of the moon, caresses the dark bodies stranded ashore. In the city where she was born, the streets are cleaned from all the rain, and the buildings downtown stand sleek and tall. Where she lives, the sidewalks are broken up by tree roots, and a witch resides on every block. I drive slowly through the numbered streets, turn down the radio. Small houses line up with their small hinged gates. Windows glow with the blue light of television. Her front yard teems with felines and dead plants. I pull up by the curb. A baby sits in the crabgrass growing there. We make eye contact as I enter the gate. The young mother kneels nearby. Do you know these people? I say when she opens the door. She looks to where I vaguely gesture at the baby and mother. No, she says, shaking her head. Come in. What took you so long? The baby is on its belly now, nibbling at the dirt. Children don't seem to die in the city. Only she didn't open the door. She, my girl, she wasn't there. There was only the baby on the lawn. We stared at each other for a while. Eventually, I got back in the car. I knew I couldn't be far now from Bliss Place. The streets were like any other. They met at right angles, fitted together. Fluorescent lights spilled into parking lots, warehouses, and yards. I knew I wouldn't find it, but I knew it was there. Just like she had said, the streets didn't lead anywhere. Sometimes the nights were like that. They began, but didn't end. We had already missed it, she and I, the eve of our something. And it didn't really matter, I guess. I rolled the windows down and waited for the ocean, the waves breaking on the shore. I could only hear the highway.
And now I'd like to introduce Thirii Myint.
To introduce Sarah Roth. Sorry to stay in front of the mic for so long. Do the dead feel jealous of their clones? How tasty are Daddy's meat pies? What is the sound of she-lions growling? These are just a few of the questions that Sarah Elizabeth Roth poses in her prose. Prose, I would like to emphasize, because Sarah is no mere lowly writer of fiction. She is an aspiring troubadour, a poet, a playwright, a cartologist of mythscapes, a cataloger of found art, a translator. That's for Johannes. Sarah has threatened her readers with an apocalypse in St. Louis, Missouri, has illuminated the post-natural body. She has investigated the material culture of a circus called Gypsyland. Sarah is play, as circus, as dance, as wild, as body, as sun, as moon, as animal, as meat. She took the man out of Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and she woke up the girl from the dream. Sarah is dream, is nightmare, is ghost, is mime, is hunger, is fun, is hypnosis, is my friend. And I'm very proud to introduce her tonight.
Thanks, Thirii. Oh, wait.
That was lovely. Thank you. I don't have any physical objects for you to interact with tonight. However, you're welcome to interact with each other as I read from my project, Gypsyland. This is a beginning chunk of it. What? Yes, please do. I'd like to encourage that. Okay. Mathilde the Magnificent walks the tightrope when the moon is full. Elegant and sweetie, Mathilde is Gypsyland Company traveling show's most sure-footed acrobat. Mathilde's massive ankles swaddle tiny, delicate feet. With such ankles, Mathilde the Magnificent could, without faltering, tread a strand of spider's silk. High above the ring, Mathilde glides along the tightrope, flesh billowing forth from her acrobatic costume. Mathilde likes the way the moonlight limns her fat, rendering the dimples of her buttocks pearly and evanescent. The skin of her arms falls and sways, catching light like oil in a pan. "The touch of moonlight is better than a lover," she says. "You know exactly when to expect it." Mathilde is from Paris, which I am not. She's traveled to many places, even Stonehenge. She carries her past as, on the ground, she carries a charred-wool coat atop her shoulders, sumptuously. She does not talk overmuch about the past. She balances it with the present, for she is an expert balancer. Beneath Mathilde, she-lions prowl the floor of the ring. Their gazes steer from Mathilde to the audience to Mathilde. Their gazes say, "We are hungry." The she-lions are not fed before Mathilde's act. For, sated, our she-lions will spoon one another, eyelids heavy and tongues lolling, paws patting lazily at errant flies. Starved, our she-lions stalk the ring's periphery, gazes mean and expectant. Stasis is only entertaining for we who love the she-lions. The she-lions lick their chops and circle. Mathilde walks. Her mouth is a thin red line. The she-lions purr and narrow their eyes, crouching. Audience, audience, this is a gimmick. Fearing for Mathilde's life, viewers clutch concernedly at their chin whiskers. Poor, fat woman, they think. She may very well plunge to her death. Death by the mouths of beasts, at that. I want to comfort the fearful audience. I want to run my fingers along their frayed scalps. The she-lions will not eat Mathilde. The she-lions keep a diet of trout and kale. Ringmaster Joe says that our pride of lions is a shame of lions. The circus is a pity game. While Mathilde walks along the tightrope, luxurious thighs swaying like sails, Madeline and I watch the faces of the viewers in the stands. We crouch by the thick velvet door to the costume tent, huddled together beneath many layers of damask and silk. In the silhouetted faces of the audience, Madeline searches for sorrow, while I search for pleasure. Suckers, Madeline whispers. As Mathilde the Magnificent cartwheels to the tightrope's end, the audience exhales in unison. Mathilde's ankles are studded with diamonds. Moonlight streams through the tent's ceiling slats and onto the stones, refracting to pour great lustrous pools into the circus cavern. The spectacle occurs only at the end of the tightrope, only on the full moon. The tent speckles with millions of flickering silver slivers. The audience's eyes speckle with awe. Fairies, I whisper. Mathilde the Magnificent catches hold of a rope ladder and falls away into swinging darkness. In the morning, the grounds of the Gypsyland Company traveling show are littered with gum and candy wrappers. Dew pearls the trash. Like us, in settlement, Dew doesn't discern plastic from grass. The big tent sits at the center of Gypsyland's grounds. The flag tip juts into the moon. It is not yet dawn, and the tent's flag seems miles above me. The moon looks like a mouth about to eat Gypsyland. Hello, mouth, I say. Shh, Cass, the moon says. I'm dreaming. In our tent, Madeline dreams of home. A permanent thing. Soft rolling hills. Grandmother's hands. Crisp nights. Cabbage heads booby traps. Mother angry and sweet. When she sleeps, Madeline forgets about Gypsyland. Though it's been years since she ran to us, she is still fresh from family. We can smell it on her. It smells like laundry. If I had wings, I wonder how long it would take me to fly into the moon's mouth. I'm small, several minutes at least. Trails of trash snake from the big tent's flapping doors to Gypsyland's exit arches. I follow the trails, collecting trinkets left by hurried members of the audience. When I return to my pallet, I will log the trinkets in my book of augurs. In our tent, Madeline and I are engaging in scientific inquiry. We keep our logbooks in secret compartments beneath our pillows. We are inquiring into notions of home. In the archive, Madeline catalogs emotions. I catalog things. Toulouse, Big Tent. Day 43. Item, ceramic doll. Note, chipped skin, one eye missing. Tiny book. The Beat, tragedy, no clue. Dead cricket. Pen. Glitter. Into my satchel they go. The traveling show is tented here for 43 days. Every morning before breakfast sweep, I walk the grounds, which are divided into 3 camps of fixed company, the seers, the acrobats, and the tricksters. Walking paths sprawl out to segment the camp of the 3 factions. The caretakers of beasts live at the periphery, curled by the beasts in their dens. Do you hear that? A cacophony of brays, growls, and hoots echoes from the beasts' quarters. On some mornings, I walk by the quarters as the animal orchestra erupts, and I fall into a crouch, making noises, to see which species responds most quickly. This is a way to know what kind of beast I am most like on that day. Gypsyland holds a full menagerie of beasts. Some days I am a llama, bray. Other days I'm a wolf, howl. Most often, I'm an insect, chirp. For in the early morning, cicadas resound the most loudly. This morning I am a girl, howl, and far away from the beasts, and I weave through Gypsyland's grounds before the company awakens. Watcherly solitude is rare and delicious for a girl beast. Madeline dreams of animal discontent. Her mother's farm is stampeded by exotica, zebras, hyenas, a lone manticore. Madeline wakes up and stretches. The acrobats' camp separates the seers from the tricksters, which suits the seers and the tricksters just fine, for the seers do not fraternize with the tricksters. Acrobats often creep from the tricksters' tents before breakfast sweep, disheveled and grinning, or disheveled and angry. The acrobats fall in lust easily, and the tricksters are notorious masters of seduction. When do lust and love align? Asks the choir of audience members. I don't know, choir. I'm just a girl beast. This morning, the tricksters' camp is wrecked. Knives' hilts poke up from the grass. Mismatched shoes and condom wrappers, bobblehead dolls and blank canvases with broken frames, all pile by the trickster's fire pit. I keep 2 things. Bread in the shape of a swan, some mold, silver bell. It works? The trickster's tents are sprawled across their camp, loosely placed around the fire. Last night's blaze smolders on, bits of ash flying into the air. The skin on Madeline's back begins to itch. Dame Esme is a dwarf mistress who is a trickster. She lives in the smallest tent, that is also the most ornate. I think of her as chief trickster, though the tricksters are rather democratic and scorn hierarchy. Her door, the closest to the fire pit, is decked out with rubies and newspaper clippings. Each month, as the moon wanes, Dame Esme holds interfaction poker tournaments in her tent. This morning, her tent is shaking. The door zips open, gems parting and falling with the cloth. Out emerges Mathilde the Magnificent, still wearing last night's acrobatic costume. It is ripped. Mascara drips down her cheeks. Her enormous arms and legs are encrusted with rhinestones. Every inch of her seems to be coated in glitter. Dame Esme walks to the door of her tent and pokes a tiny hand out, touching Mathilde's neck and helping to tenderly exhume the woman. Mon chéri, she says. Mathilde, extracting herself from the clinging tent cloth, turns to the dwarf mistress, opens her mouth, and licks the tiny woman's scalp. Her broad tongue coats Dame Esme's coif with slobber. Dame Esme catches my glance. I'm half bent, picking up a dried apple core from the edge of the fire pit. Apples are not in season, I think. Who is eating apples this late in the season? Dame Esme winks at me and zips up the door to her tent. Mathilde walks away, towards the acrobats' camp. A breeze whizzes in her wake. It smells like patchouli and rot. I walk the other way. I want to see the seers at sunrise. When she arrived to Gypsyland's arch gates in St. Vincent, Madeline had looked a perfectly ordinary child. Curious, said Ringmaster Joe. Though her hair was matted and her teeth mossy, Madeline's eyes were clear and her skin a flawless amber. Ringmaster Joe leaned against the neon arches, contemplating the child as she sat, legs crisscrossed in a pile of leaves. All 10 fingers, all 10 toes, no pocks. Ringmaster Joe thought herself a selective and insightful ringmaster. She had cultivated a keen eye for the early seeds of the bazaar. Ringmaster Joe could look into the eyes of a vagrant child and, stroking the 3 long hairs that grew from her upper lip, know exactly when madness would sprout. Fertile madness, the kind of madness Gypsyland could use. The child looked up from her pile of leaves with a shiver. Let me take you to the soothsayers, Ringmaster Joe said. Ringmaster Joe pulled Madeline up by the hand and scooted along the pathway to the seers' camp, hump bobbing. Outside the seers' tents, swaths of diaphana hang loosely from clotheslines. They draw a vector through the seers' camp. Whenever we tent at a new site, the seers unpack a giant sextant. They use the configuration of the stars to determine the layout of their residential camp. This means straight lines. I like to watch the seers exit their tents. At the exact moment that the sun touches the horizon, every tent unzips in unison. The sound is a dulcet rip. Zip! Out creep lines of men and women, and in-betweens, in heavy cloths and spectacles. Good morning, Harris, I say. My voice comes forth a squeak, so it would actually sound like, Good morning, Harris! Harris is a tall, gaunt seer. Harris has emerged from the healing tent, smack in the center of the seers' camp. He looks directly into the nascent sunrise, and his eyes fleck with orange. He is several years my elder. Each of us was born in a mountain town. Each of us toddled to Gypsyland when we could hardly walk. As Gypsyland passes closely by townships, it magnetizes young runaways like iron filings. Gypsyland doesn't steal its company members, it attracts them. Hello, Cass, Harris says. Behind his back he holds something. Behind his placid seer's mask is a grin. Harris is apprenticed to Jane, the company's head alchemist. So far, Harris has taught me how to turn iron into silver. Until Madeline and I find our true talents, we are apprenticed to Ringmaster Joe. We are unlikely, says Ringmaster Joe, to encounter our true talents until we are of age. I imagine encountering my true talent to be like encountering a wild wildebeest, a back-and-forth dance of conquering and play. I stride on my stubby legs, and Harris strides on his long ones. We meet nose to nose. He takes hold of my hand and places an object in my palm. It is bulky and angular. We are still nose to nose. His breath smells like gruel. I step away and look at the object in my hand. It is a large wooden box with an embedded accordion and gold inlay. It's an instantograph, Harris says. You can capture things with it. Item, instantograph from Harris. Note, for capturing things. Harris pulls a sheaf of papers from the pockets of his robes. These are from the instantograph, Harris says. It's a Clydesdale model. It's really antique. These are me, I say. These are of you, Harris says. Does this mean you've captured me? I ask. Item, sheet of papers from Harris. Note, me. Dizzy, I begin to slip the sheaf of papers of me into my satchel. Harris holds my arms. No, he says, don't wrinkle them. Harris takes the papers from me and smooths them with his hands, only touching their blank backsides. Your satchel looks heavy, Harris says. Would you like me to carry it for you, Cass? No, thank you, I say. I'd like to carry it myself. Here, let me help you, Harris says. He reaches for the strap of my satchel. I swing it, a sturdy heave, to hit him in the thighs. He buckles. Cass, he says, wheezing. I like to carry my own bag, I say. Okay, he says. In our tent, Madeline is lethargic. The skin on her back is peeling. It falls through her nightdress and onto the floor in curly chunks. As the grounds outside come alive, Madeline tries to fall back to sleep. Home, she thinks. Madeline is stuck on home today. Madeline's back itches. I think I'm in love, I say to Madeline, as I zip open the door to our tent and step inside. I think I'm in love, and I cataloged a lot of things this morning. Madeline is hugging herself and rolling around on her pallet. Look, I say. I pull out the papers with me on them. Harris took these without my knowing, I say. He captured me. He offered to carry my satchel, and I hit him. Madeline opens her eyes. They are red-rimmed, though she has slept for 2 extra hours this morning. Madeline sits up. She's still hugging herself, moving her hands up and down along her back. Look, I say. I lay out the papers of me on the floor of her tent, and I pull the instantograph machine from my satchel. I place it at my feet. These are photographs, Madeline says, pointing to the papers. And that, she says, pointing to the instantograph, is a camera. Madeline nudges the instantograph sadly with a bare toe. Ringmaster Joe and Matilda's Joyo sit outside Joe's tent and drink gin from Gypsyland plastic mugs. Matilda lounges across 3 folding chairs that have been hacked apart and sewn together. She has drawn a voluminous bathrobe across her acrobat's costume. She is still plastered in glitter. Joe and Matilda have known each other for many years. When Ringmaster Joe was not yet a ringmaster, was merely a petite in her suit adolescent with a humped back, she came across Matilda in her village's marketplace. Young Joe saw Matilda sorting through a basket of apples. Young Joe was immediately enthralled. Something about the way Matilda filled the marketplace with her presence, the elegant, corporeal way Matilda handled the marketplace apples, palming them as if the fruits were already a part of her body. In our tent, Madeline takes off her nightgown. Madeline, I say. The flesh of Madeline's back is chapped in pink. Some things black and reptilian are trying to claw their way out of her skin, where the most has fallen away. It is not enough said that ringmasters are differentially soft-spoken. Sipping on her mid-morning gin, Ringmaster Joe is trying to sputter forth her feelings. Matilda would prefer if she did not. Ringmaster Joe does not know of Matilda's liaison with Dame Esme. Matilda Joyo would prefer to keep it that way. Matilda pours Joe another mugful of gin. In her tent, Madeline is sprouting wings. The slick, membranous material pokes from the skin of her back, slowly at first, as if testing the air. Then, like an umbrella opening, the material expands, showering the 2 of us in dead skin and blood. Madeline's wings stretch to touch the edges of the tent's interior. I'm a beast, Madeline says. Madeline's wings smell like sulfur. She moves them cautiously, and then quickly. A rush of wind swirls around our pallets, whipping our hair into tangles, whisking my papers of me under the pallets and into the corners of the tent. Madeline moves her wings. The tent is windy. Madeline rises and falls. She is still naked. Can I have some privacy? Madeline asks. I give her a look. She has wings. But we're sisters, I say. Circus sisters. Nobody can know, Madeline says, especially Joe. Outside the tent, I prop up my instantograph on a 3-legged stool and look through its lens. I wonder how many papers I could make with it. Item, large piece of skin. Note, from Madeline's back. Now wings. Through the lens of the instantograph, it looks as if everything is underwater. Across a stretch of grass, I see, amid squiggly aquatic lines, Ringmaster Joe and Matilda the Magnificent talking with their chins lowered. They hardly ever talk with their chins lowered. Through the lens, I see an underwater Harris walking up to me. I keep my gaze steady. I can feel very faintly the ground tremble with Madeline's wing beats. In, Ringmaster Joe ushered, unzipping the door and pushing Madeline through and into the soothsayer's tent. Madeline sat on a stool. The chief soothsayer dealt her some tarot cards. Meanwhile, 3 other soothsayers, peering distastefully through spectacles at the flies haloing Madeline's matted crown, consulted a tapestry that lined the swinging walls of their tent. They said. In our tent, Madeline is flapping her wings. Out they stretch. Up she goes. Our tent breaks open, and Madeline plunges into the sky. Sorry. Sorry that took so long.